And how is everyone doing this morning? Thank you for getting on the call. Zeta called and you answered. I'd like to welcome you to our Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Virtual Domestic Violence Symposium. That's a mouthful. My name is Dr. Beverly Gray, and I am the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Inc. State Domestic Violence Coordinator. We're hosting this event in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It is both an honor and a privilege to address you today and represent our trailblazing vision of our 5 triumphant founders, who without them we would not be. They're going to share the screen in just a minute because I started. I'm sorry. Great. I'm excited. There they go. That's the lovelies. Oh, without them, we would not be here today. I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are and why we do what we do. Zeta Phi Beta Sorority was founded on the campus of Howard University, January 16th, 1920. It was created with the precedence to fight for women's rights and raise people's consciousness during the time when African American women did not have a voice and were underrepresented. And despite knowing the hurdles that were ahead of them, our young, courageous founders forged a path forward with the desire to be change makers and addressed issues regarding public service, poverty, social activism, prejudices against women's advancements, all while they maintain a focus of high standards of scholastic achievements. We are high achievers and fostering a great sense of unity among the membership. We are the only sorority that is constitutionally bound to a fraternity. We don't just say the Sigmas are our brothers, they are our brothers. We are a community conscious, action oriented organization who works with partners that provide resources and information on a variety of issues, offering opportunities for us to serve our community. You see, this is why we, the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Inc., continues to honor those trailblazing visions of our founders, speaking out against social ills of the day, like domestic violence, and advocating for social, health, and economic justice in our communities. So today's symposium, we embrace the power of she, advocating for social justice, health justice, and economic justice with regards to domestic violence, the survivors, their families, and the community. Our theme today is domestic violence is more than just an individual struggle. It is a community struggle. And when the community struggles, when one person struggles, the community struggles. And we're in that with them. So I thank you. And we also want to say thank you, and we are grateful for our leadership. Our next slide. We have our international president and CEO, Dr. Stacy N.C. Grant, who leads us. Our Atlantic Regional Director, the Honorable Beverly S. Tantham. You know, I like her name, Beverly. And our illustrious Commonwealth of Pennsylvania State Director, Olivia B. Miller. We thank them for their leadership and their guidance. And at this time, I'm going to ask our state director to bring us greetings in her own way. State
Well,
Director.
good morning, source friends. Fred, can everyone hear me? Good morning. I am clearly not Sora Miller. She is here doing triple duty at Phi Beta Sigma's area meeting at Westchester University. So you get me. I'm Takesha Mundy, and it is my pleasure to Violence Symposium. We are honored and solidarity to learn, to share, and to strengthen our collective response to domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Your presence is a powerful statement of compassion and commitment to creating safer communities, supporting survivors, and advancing justice. Thank you for being a part of this vital conversation. May today's discussion inspire partnerships, fresh perspectives,
Thank you so much for stepping in. I don't know if it's my web. I hope it's clear. It's a little choppy. At this time, we're going to have Deshawn Sowell.
For your attention today. Welcome to our Domestic Violence Symposium.
It's breaking up. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off because it was breaking up? Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. And thank you for stepping in. And see, that's what it is. We're boots on the ground. We're in the trenches. We stay working for our community, and we thank our Madam State Director. I know she would be here. If she could split herself up into about 4 pieces, she'd have been here. But tell her we said thank you. At this time, we're going to ask Deshawn Sowell to give an overview and an introduction of our Shiro, our special guest our special guest panelists. Before she starts, I'd like to say thank you to the panel, the members who helped to put this together. There's no man is an island, and you have to work in a unity in a group if you want to have things done properly. So I want to say thank you to all the committee members. So at this time, Deshawn, please, can you introduce our Shiro?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sora Gray, for that lovely introduction. I want to thank everyone again for choosing to spend their morning with us to discuss such an important topic. And before I get into one of two of our wonderful speakers, I want to share some general information about domestic and intimate partner violence. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So when we talk about domestic or intimate partner violence, we're talking about a pattern of behaviors, not just a single incident. It's a combination of assaultive and controlling actions that one person uses to gain power and control over their partner. These behaviors can take many forms: physical harm, sexual abuse, emotional or psychological manipulation, and even financial control. It's not always about hitting. Sometimes it's about isolating someone, controlling their access to money, or breaking down their confidence. It's important to remember that this can happen to anyone: adults, teens, people of every background, all cultures, religions, ages, sexual orientations, and income levels. Simply put, Domestic violence does not discriminate. Next slide, please. So when we look at the numbers, it's clear that domestic violence is far more common than most people realize. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, and nearly half of LGBTQ plus individuals will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Here in Pennsylvania, the cost of that violence adds up. More than 156 billion over a lifetime in medical care, lost wages, and other impacts. Even more heartbreaking, we lose over 100 people every year to domestic violence in this state, with firearms being the leading cause. And while reports of domestic violence have gone down, the severity of the abuse has gone up. Cases are more intense, more dangerous, and more likely to turn deadly. These numbers remind us that domestic violence doesn't happen somewhere else. It affects our families, our friends, neighbors, coworkers, and our communities. Next slide, please. Black women are 4 times more likely than white women to be killed, often by an intimate partner. And when there's a gun present, the risk of death increases 5-fold, making these situations even more dangerous. Domestic violence doesn't stop with adults. Childhood domestic violence disproportionately affects Black communities, exposing more children to trauma that can lead to educational setbacks and long-term economic hardship. We also know that 30 to 60% of abusers who harm their partners also abuse children in the same home. Now, this overlap shows how deeply connected intimate partner violence and child abuse are, and why breaking that cycle is critical for future generations. Next slide. Let's talk about soul trauma. And when we talk about soul trauma, we're talking about something that goes deeper than a diagnosis. It's the emotional and psychological wounds that cut into our sense of self, our peace, our purpose, and our ability to feel whole. It can come from abuse, neglect, violence, or experiencing a profound loss. And it shows up in many ways: emotionally through anxiety, depression, or disconnection; physically through chronic tension or a constant sense of feeling unsafe; and relationally through trust issues, fear of intimacy, or difficulty communicating. Healing from soul trauma takes more than time. It takes the courage to break generational cycles and push through cultural barriers that tell us to stay silent or to just be strong. So when we name it, when we start to talk about it, we begin to reclaim our sense of self and move towards healing. Next slide. In conversations about domestic violence, the focus is usually on women because women make up the majority of reported cases. But it's important to remember that men can be victims too. Recognizing male victims doesn't take away from the experiences of women, it expands the conversation because every survivor deserves to be seen, believed, and supported. One of the biggest challenges is underreporting, as many men don't come forward because of the fear or shame or even a lack of awareness that what they're experiencing is abuse, especially when it's verbal, psychological, or financial. Men of all ages, backgrounds, and sexual orientations are affected, and abuse can come from male or female partners. Then there's this stigma, as society often tells men that they need to be strong, they need to be in control, or they're the protector. That pressure can make it hard for many men to admit when they're being hurt or to ask for help. And many men never report abuse because of that fear, shame, or that embarrassment to ask for help. Next slide. So people will often ask, why doesn't the person just leave? Well, leaving can be dangerous. There's a risk of increased violence when leaving. Safety planning is essential, like considering the safety of children in the home who may be direct or indirect victims. Abusers often cut off family, friends, and support, and that isolation reinforces dependency and fear. Financial dependence, housing, transportation, childcare, a lack of resources can inhibit a person's plans to leave. Then there's the cycle of violence: tension leading up to the incident, reconciliation, and then calm. During those periods of reconciliation and calm, the hope for change can make leaving harder. And then there can be a lack of institutional support or limitations of the support that's provided. While clergy and counselors may offer emotional and spiritual guidance, certain beliefs or attitudes can hinder their effectiveness. The judicial system and police can issue and enforce protection orders or PFAs, but a PFA doesn't always prevent abusers from returning, such as when the order expires. Leaving is a process that often involves leaving and returning multiple times. There is an average of 7 attempts before permanent separation. Patience, understanding, and ongoing support are key to helping someone leave an abusive situation. Access to shelters, hotlines, and community support is vital. So now that we've shared some information about domestic and intimate partner violence, we'll hear directly from someone who has experienced it and survived. Our first speaker, and I'm very honored and humbled to introduce her, is Soror Cynthia Cindy Drakeford, wife, mother, and Empower Her CEO. Soror Drakeford is a survivor of domestic violence whose journey from brokenness to breakthrough has become the foundation of her purpose. Cynthia's story is not one of defeat, but one of resilience, faith, and renewal. Today, she stands as a living testament that healing is possible and thriving is within reach. As the founder and CEO of Ascend Consulting Group, LLC, Cindy uses her platform to empower leaders and organizations to rise above challenges with clarity and confidence. Beyond titles and roles, her deepest calling is to help others reclaim their voices, rediscover their worth, and step boldly into the fullness of who they are. Every day, Cindy carries the honor of being a wife, mother, and woman of faith who chose to transform pain into purpose. Her mission is simple: to show that surviving is only the beginning, true victory is in the thriving. Sora Drakeford, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Wanting to make sure you can indeed hear and see me. Perfect.
Yes, we can see you. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. I moved close to the window, y'all, because we're having some tech issues this morning on my end. But I did just want to thank all who invited me to be with you all today. Like most times when I prepare for a presentation, I wrote out an entire script. And then, like many survivors, I overthought it and created anxiety and threw it out. And I thought, well, you can't be wrong if it's your story. So I just thank you all for giving me that opportunity this morning to share that. And I'm not going to, I don't want to do anything very triggering, but I do want to tell the truth of domestic violence. And so for me, I think it even started before I was in the situation because I had to learn from a very young age what love was and what love wasn't. And so when I grew up with my family, the way we interacted, sarcasm, bitterness, fighting, making up, the trauma cycle was normal. That's what love was. That's what women and men did. And so it was something that I had learned was acceptable over time. And there was a lot of various childhood traumas that probably played into the fact that I didn't want to be alone in life. And so for me, being with somebody, anybody, was better than being with myself because I didn't like myself very much because of the experiences I had been through. And I think another contributing factor, and it really depends on the generations, but in my generation, what happened in the house stayed in the house, and you kept it quiet, and you dealt with it inside. You didn't talk about it outside, no matter how bad it got. And you just kept pushing through and you kept surviving, if you will. And that was something I learned from a very, very young age. So when it came to the man who became my first husband, so I can thankfully say, jump to the end story. I am remarried to a wonderful, wonderful Sigma husband of mine, but it was not always that way for me. And when I first started dating, I was in college. I was a single mother. I had just got a potential cancer diagnosis. I wanted another child, and I took basically whatever came my way. Although I did care for him, I did love the way he treated my children. Like many people that are abusers, and I'm not saying it's all men, women can be abusers as well, but they have a type, and it's their particular type, right? So no, there's no one type of victim or victimology that makes you susceptible to domestic violence. It's unique to each abuser what they prey on. And this particular person preyed on someone that had lower self-esteem, had children, so I was preoccupied, and also had a very true calling to religion. and the religion was used within that domestic violence. But I remember when I first met him, one of the things about myself is that I was a giver, and he was experiencing some trouble, and I felt like, oh my goodness, I can take care of him, I can fix him, I can change him. And that's how our relationship began. And when there was little clues, like maybe he got a little angry about what I wore, or he maybe pushed me just a little bit, I could reason with myself, oh, he loved me, and that's why he got upset. That's how men show that they love you. They fight over you. I came to learn later in life that they don't fight over you, they fight for you. They should be fighting for you because they love you, not just to be in possession of you as an individual. And so we got married, and I was 19 at the time I got married after dating only 7 months. I had my children, and I just pushed through, and I pushed through. And it started little, and I could reason with myself. He didn't punch me in the face. He didn't leave a bruise. Oh, this isn't domestic violence. This is not what I know domestic violence to be. I'm not bloodied and everything like that, right? It's a shove, it's a throwing of a shoe, it's a not letting you go somewhere, it's a silent isolation from your family. But it grew and grew and grew over time, and the physical became worse. The children began to see it. But I remembered what I was taught, that a family with a mother and a father was better than a broken home. And so you stuck it out, and you stayed there. I'd also went and I had a little bit, I'll be honest, I had a little bit of church hurt. They said, "What are you doing? What are you doing to make this person react in this way? Are you raising your voice? Are you being angry?" So I learned to think hard about what I said, think hard about what I thought, think hard about how I moved. I overthought about every little action. And then I buried myself into work. That's all I had. That's all I was. I was defined by my work and my children. And some people thought it was crazy. Like, "Cindy, you have a whole college degree and you're the breadwinner in your family. This man doesn't work. How does he maintain this control over you?" And it was again back to that thing that a bad family was better than a broken family. So much so that I had tried to escape a few times. I tried to leave. And I love my mother dearly, and I don't think she knew what she was saying at the time. But she said, "You go home. Your children need you. Your children need you there. You go back and you stick it out." And I did. And that's when things turned for the worse. We had already had all three of our children. And that's where the physical started, into the walls, into the bruising, into everything of that nature. But I just kept sticking it out. I kept sticking it out for the children. I kept telling myself, well, if he's hurting me, he's not hurting them. I was wrong. I learned that much later in life, but that was my thought. And that's what kept me going in domestic violence. And I did try to talk to people, and they, did the kind of standard thing. And I don't blame them. "Oh, you keep telling me you're going to leave him. You haven't left him yet. Oh, he did this to you. Why didn't you leave him yet? Oh, he doesn't do this. Why didn't you leave him yet?" I didn't know how. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to break apart my family. I didn't know how to live with that guilt. And so I lived with him instead until, and this is why October is so hard for me. And I was telling one of my sisters this. October was the last engagement that we had. We had an in-home separation, which for me kind of made sense. Like, hey, you're here. I'll still be with you, but I'm not really with you. And it was at that time that I was pretty much not bothering anyone, sticking to myself, and he kept trying to get in the door. Just kept trying to get in the door. He kept trying to get into the bedroom. And I just kept trying to fight. "Don't leave the children alone. Leave the children alone. We just want to go to sleep. Leave us alone. Leave us alone." And then he pushed me so hard that I fell into quite a few things, bruised up quite pretty badly. And I called the police. I did call the police. And this was the one time I was really afraid because the police came. The police said, "We didn't see it. We don't see any bruises." There's nothing we can do. Just leave each other alone. Leave each other alone. And I thought, wow, wow, I'm really trying. I finally cried out for help, and they're not going to help me. Leave each other alone. I must have did something again. I must have did something to provoke them. Maybe it was that was in the other room. Maybe I should have slept on the couch. Maybe this, maybe that. And I went back to the bedroom and I tried to do what they say. I was speaking to a dear friend of mine. I said, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I don't know what it is. I can't breathe. They said, please go to the bathroom. Just look at your ribs. Just look at your ribs. Please just go. I said, I don't know. I don't want to go out there. I don't want to. So I listened. I listened very closely for footsteps to see what was going on. And I came to see that I was covered in black and blue. They begged me to go to the hospital. I said, I already told somebody. I already told the police. No one's going to listen. Why am I going to go? They said, you can't breathe. You can't walk. You can't move. What else are you going to do? So I did. I did go to the hospital that night in October 2013. And they were mandated reporters. And I was crying. I said, I've already called the police. No one's going to listen. Well, the police came within 5 to 10 minutes. I said, well, that's interesting. They looked at me. They said, had we seen that, we would have arrested him on the spot. I said, oh, so you didn't believe what I said to you? Okay, no problem. And he did get arrested. He did. And I returned home. But that was not the end of my DV because the courts let him out right away. He got to go home. Not to my home. He was told to stay away from me, but he began to stalk me. And that was the beginning of a nightmare where I thought I was going insane, being stalked, pictures taken of me, random things showing up. But it's okay because I survived from that. I grew strong. I learned how to fight back. I learned women from abuse, they're on here and they'll talk next. Help me find lawyers. They helped me find advocates, therapists, mentors. Grew stronger and stronger. Maybe a little too much at first. I became very hard, very controlling. I controlled everything around me. That's what we do. We make sure no one can ever take control of us again. And I pushed people away. And I said, nobody can hurt me. But on the inside, everything hurts. Everything hurts. I was broken. I didn't even know who I was. And that's my story. And that's the story of many, many people are surviving. So all I can say to you is if you're there and you're going through it and you think he loves you and you think, well, this is something we enjoy together, this rough kind of experience, this rough play, really truly think about why is this happening? Why are you allowing this to happen? Is there something in yourself that needs to heal? Because I can tell you 10 years later, right? It's been a little over 11 years. It feels like yesterday. And I finally healed. But it's been a long time. So thank you for having me on the panel today. Survival is possible. Overcoming this is possible. Thriving is possible. You guys heard my background story and my businesses and stuff like that. I even opened my own nonprofit. But there's a lot of work, a lot of therapy, and a lot of healing to go through. But thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you, Sora Drakeford, again, for being here with us today and sharing such personal and powerful insights about your experience. And before we let you go, I just want to ask you one question because you did mention Women Against Abuse, who's on the line and will be speaking next. But what types of other support or resources made the biggest difference for you as you were preparing to leave?
Honestly, as I was preparing to leave, I did not know where to turn. I felt very alone. But I was thankful to a few friends that hadn't given up on me yet. They've heard I had left, I was leaving 20 gazillion times, and they knew the average and how many times it really takes to leave and what that means. And they helped me prepare. They helped me prepare a plan and let me know budgets, financial, I'd be okay. I've been doing it all this time. So having a really close-knit family, being honest with people, speaking to my parents saying, you don't really know what's happening. Please listen to me. Please. It's not worth being in a nuclear family. It's tearing us apart. And so that community was very important in finding those community resources, because your friends can't be your therapist, your parents can't be your therapist. And what we want to do when we leave, we want to blame everybody. You told me to leave. You told me to do this. You told me to do that. I needed to make the decision for myself. And I found neutral parties that could help me make that decision.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, that reinforces the whole theme of this symposium, that is not just an individual problem, it's a community issue, and how we as families and friends and community members can support. So thank you so much again. I think you'll be hanging around a little bit if you can for our panel, but thank you so much for sharing your personal story with us. We really appreciate it. And if there's someone on here that whose heart that is touched, or that they can share with someone else to give them some information, that's just going to be another plus. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now we will hear from our second speaker, Maritza Padua, Vice President of Policy and Strategic Initiatives with Women Against Abuse, to offer another powerful lens on this issue. As the President of Policy and Strategic Initiatives at Women Against Abuse, Maritza oversees efforts related to fostering an organizational culture in which staff thrive. She is also responsible for ensuring the implementation of Women Against Abuse's strategic plan, leading the organization's strategic initiatives and partnerships, and guiding the organization's prevention, advocacy, and public policy efforts. Maritza has over 10 years of experience developing programs that build businesses, increase engagement, and bring services to communities and populations in need. Her experience includes marketing roles in Medicaid managed care health plans, state and local government, and grassroots community development. She is well known as a business developer, product development expert, and organizer. Let's welcome Maritza Padua.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. I can't even believe it's still morning. I feel like we're way into the afternoon at this point. Cynthia, what a powerful story you've just shared. And I just want to, once again, I know I said this earlier, but I just want to once again, give you some kudos for standing up for yourself, for standing strong and believing that you had the power within to get through this, and leaning on your support systems at the time when you needed it most, to get yourself free from intimate partner violence. I just want to elevate you once again and thank you for your willingness to share your story. So good morning once again, everyone. My name is Maritza Padua. You've heard a little bit of my background from Deshawn. Thank you so much, Deshawn, for sharing that. Once again, I am with Women Against Abuse. Women Against Abuse is the leading domestic violence service provider and advocate in the Philadelphia area. We serve thousands of people each year through many different services that we render as an organization. Some of those are Women Against Abuse is the operator of the only 2 domestic violence shelters located in the Philadelphia area. They are the only emergency shelters for people who have to flee their homes to be safe from intimate partner violence and domestic violence, where we have 24-hour security and many on-site support services by way of those services. And that's for anyone experiencing intimate partner violence, regardless of gender and gender identity. We also have 15 units of transitional housing for folks who are making their way out of shelter and into a more long-term living situation. We have a 30+ member legal center that provides free attorney representation for people seeking protection from abuse orders and custody of their children. We also have hotline counseling As Deshawn mentioned earlier, my team, which is the prevention team, who provide prevention services or prevention education in the form of community education and advocacy. Our prevention team trains first responders, social service providers, and even down to the Eagles and other sports organizations. And we also provide teen dating violence prevention education to young people to empower them to break those intergenerational cycles that Cynthia talked about earlier in the story she shared. We've been engaged in this work as an organization for almost 50 years now. And once again, I just want to reiterate that we serve people of all gender identities. Finally, the Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline. The Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline is the quickest way to access services, and it's available 24/7. I'm actually going to put the phone number in the chat so that you can put it in your phones. You never know when someone's going to need to seek help. And so the Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline, once again, is available 24/7. And you can call this number with any questions, any need that you may have related to domestic violence and intimate partner violence. We encourage you to call that number. Counselors can help callers create a plan for staying safe, which we normally refer to as a safety plan. They can connect folks with free local resources, including Women Against Abuses programs. And the hotline is available to callers in any language. So that's another big point. And finally, as you can imagine, all calls made to the domestic violence hotline are fully confidential. I'm also going to place a link to our website. Oh, someone else beat me to it. This is where you can find more information related to the domestic violence hotline. Does anyone have any questions they might want to pop into the chat, or that they may want to come off mute to ask related to what I've just shared?
Actually, Maritza, you are going to be answering questions in our next segment, our panelist segment. But I want to thank you for sharing that information about women against abuse. And I didn't get the opportunity to tell you at my workplace, which I'll share with you later, we had a robust employee engagement organization, and we did some work for women against abuse. And it was such a pleasure, always been such a pleasure working with the organization. And they has such a great mission to help people experiencing domestic violence in the city. So thank you again for being with us. Don't go too far because you're going to answer some questions as part of our panel discussion, which is coming up next. So I'm going to turn it back over to Soror Gray to lead us through the introduction of our panelists and our panelist session.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Maritza. And yes, when we start our panel discussion, you all are free to put questions in the chat. And after they introduce themselves, we will answer those questions along with some other questions that we will be filtering. Our first panelist that I will be introducing is the Reverend Dr. Wayne Weathers. Dr. Weathers is known as the Voice, a visionary voice that at the crossroads between faith and justice. He is also the pastor of Vision of Hope Baptist Church. He's a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. He has several degrees. He has his MDiv. He went to Duke University, Virginia State. He got his doctorate degree from Lutheran Theological Seminary. And he is an organizer. He's a go-to person, and he will tell you more about himself. Next slide. Dr. Weathers, please come on and introduce yourself to the community. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Dr. Wayne M. Weathers from Chester, Pennsylvania. I've been a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated since 1988 when I pledged at Virginia State University. I was a part of Nu Sigma, but currently I'm a part of Rho Delta Sigma here in South Jersey. That I wear so many hats with one head. I'm a pastor. I have my own consulting business, my own radio show. But I'm a social justice advocate, and I wanted to share that with you. This being a panelist on this particular Zoom conference is personal to me. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was a product of domestic violence. And so at a very early age, my mother would tell stories of my grandfather, who I love dearly, that would beat my grandmother severely. I've heard the horror stories of, and there was no support groups at that time. And so, and there wasn't a family structure that provided a safety net, that provided security from the abuse that my grandmother received. And so my mother would tell horror stories of, before the days of text messages and cell phones, how she would have to save up her coins. And the minute that my grandfather would come home and beat my grandmother, she would have to run to the pay telephone just to call the police to provide aid to my grandmother. And then as a result of doing that, not only did my grandmother get beat, but my mother got beat as well. So I thank you for this opportunity. Social justice is just not limited to fighting against institutions. It's really liberation for everyone, and those who are engaged, not engaged, but those who are afflicted by domestic violence. So I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Dr. Beverly, you are muted.
I'm gonna make you all laugh. We only went through COVID like 1,000 years ago, right? And we're still staying muted. Well, I'm going to introduce Shakira Lane, LPC, CAADC, NCC. She is a licensed professional counselor and a founder of the Empty Chair LLC, a private practice servicing Philadelphia and surrounding communities. She brings over a decade of clinical experience, specializing in trauma-informed care, so much needed, substance abuse disorder, the treatment of anxiety, depression, and relationship concerns. Ms. Lane is a certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor, a nationally certified counselor, and a national member mental health first aid instructor. With a strong commitment to evidence-based that promotes recovery and resilience, she facilitates numerous workshops and community programs designed to increase awareness, reduce stigma, and expand access to mental health resources. Ms. Lane remains deeply committed to fostering and growing and healing and empowering her community. Thank you, Shakira. Let's talk about yourself. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So again, the founder of the Empty Chair, we're a mental health counseling practice located right inside of Jenkintown and in Philadelphia. We do service the community. What I love best is that we service clients from ages 5 to 65 and beyond. And we really just love to empower all the individuals who come through our practice, whether it's we're certifying individuals to become mental health first aiders. That means that we are teaching individuals how to recognize the signs of distress in other people. Whether you're a teacher and you're working with children, you should be able to pick up those signs that we see in our children that we're working with, in our teenagers, in our college students. And so I'm proud to say that the Empty Chair, we are a mental health first aid training facility. We are always looking to empower individuals. We are always trauma informed. We're always looking to not just tell people like what to do, but just be like person centered. And so I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to be here to be a part of the conversation and to help out as many people as possible. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Boy, I can't wait to get to these questions. I got some questions for you. And our final panelist for today is Jocelyn Josie Jones. We know Josie Jones. She grew up learning the importance of hard work and service to her community. The principles of scholarship, service, sisterhood, and finer womanhood embodied in all she does. Josie leads a large nonprofit child development center in West Philly, dedicated to the work and education and development of children under the age of 5. She is inclusive. Oh, she was inducted, to Beta Delta Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated in 2018. Josie hit the ground running, working. She's in the streets. That's not on the paper, but that's who she is. She loves being a lifesaver to others that are in need. Josie has served in several capacities in the sorority, and she will explain and introduce herself further to you all. Welcome, Dr. Oh, I called her Doctor.
No,
Come on through. No.
I don't have a doctor in anything. A doctor in West Philly.
Maybe I'm
That is okay. That is okay. Good. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Josie Jones. I am hailing to you from the West Philadelphia area of Philadelphia, proudly member of Beta Delta Zeta chapter. I am a center director for a large child care center in the West Philadelphia corridor where we service children 6 weeks to 5 years old through the Philadelphia School District and the Chester County Intermediate Unit where we service children under the age of 3. We are a trauma-informed care center. We use the ACE study and different trauma-informed practice for all of our staff, including from anyone from the maintenance division all the way out to our president and CEO of our company. As we know, domestic violence impacts the entire family. I grew up in the 70s, so domestic violence, if you will, was a part of my family. My mother was the abuser. My mother was the physical abuser. My dad was the mental abuser, and the rest of us learned how to fight. So I'm a fighter of all kinds. Now I'm a fighter of social action and social justice. I don't have to throw hands anymore. I use my knowledge and my skill sets and my sports background to navigate any situation. And I look forward to sharing more information today. I purposely don't talk too much about what I'm up to because everybody knows Josie. You'll find me around, look me up, and you'll see what I'm up to. But I'm proud to be here today to support my sister in all her endeavors and our endeavors of the great state of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're getting to the meat and potatoes. I'm asking that all of our panelists come on. You can put this, because this is what we came for. We came for information. Because it's not an individual struggle. This is a community struggle. And we're here to help each other, but we also, as an individual, needs to know where to go to get the help. Cindy shared so vividly that she would have left if she knew how. And where we lack a little bit is sharing the resources and the information on domestic violence. We hear about so many other great causes, but this domestic violence seems to be a little obscure. It's it's a secret. It's still under the rug a little bit. But we come to pull the rug out from underneath a whole lot of folks today and share that information. So I'd like to start out with this one question, and it's general, and anyone can answer this one. Do you believe that domestic violence or intimate partner violence has increased in severity or frequently over the past year? If so, why? And what do you think we can do about that? That's open to any panelist who wants to talk.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Thanks for the question. And from the lens I sit, I have the parents and their children, and I know that since the pandemic, many of our families were isolated in the home very long periods of times, and their stress levels have increased. So when you see a child that experiences domestic violence or some sort of trauma in the home, if you will, they show signs of PTSD, failure to thrive in the classroom. They don't come in ready to do childcare, if you will. Childcare is very different. It's real learning now, and you can see children. They'll come and they'll play in what we call the house area, and they'll talk about and they'll play out what's going on in the home. You'll see them beating the doll babies, and your teacher will ask, "Hey, tell me what you're doing over here," and they'll talk about how a parent was fighting or they were beat, and it's definitely more pronounced than ever. And many times when you hear of any kind of violence in the community, it impacts our families in some way. So I would say yes, and I'm hoping that as we are discussing things like this and more programs are trauma informed, that these trends will begin to turn the other way, and we can see the improvement in our children from the approaches that we are utilizing.
I was asked to repeat it again, and I'm gonna ask one of the committee members if they're able to type it into the chat in case somebody else wants to hear it. Do you believe that domestic violence or intimate partner violence has increased in severity or frequently over the past year?
Yeah, I think it has. As Sister Josie illustrated, as a pastor, you hear or you minister or provide pastoral counseling, especially during the pandemic, post-pandemic, of the violence that has occurred. I think domestic violence, with the state of the economy right now, the fluctuation and the interpersonal things that goes on in households, I do believe that it continues and it has increased as well. And so I'm in agreement that I do believe that there is an increase of domestic violence that is taking place within the household or in relationships as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to chime in and say that I think the fact that there are more community-based prevention efforts is the reason that we are beginning to hear more about what's happening behind closed doors. Not necessarily that it's not necessary, I don't believe that it's necessarily increasing. I mean, we're seeing data, and that's kind of why I wanted to kind of stand down from this question. However, I just wanted to point out that that's a positive, right? It's not a positive that, we're seeing more or we're hearing more, but it's a positive. It's a testament to the work that's being done at a community level, within our schools, within our professional settings. Cynthia said something earlier in her story which was what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. And we know that in many cultural backgrounds, that is the case. What happens at home stays at home. No one repeats what happens there. And I think we're breaking down those silos by way of prevention and education. And I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. So if that be so, how can we help our children? Because I want to ask this question. Do you believe that the children's education is suffering or their inability to learn is a result of what's going on in the house, and how can the teachers assist them? Josie, you can.
That's a packed question.
It
So,
is.
so a couple things happen in domestic violence. So, when you think of domestic violence, many people think woman and a man, partners, but in the homes there is all types of violence, right? You have siblings on siblings violence, that's domestic because they're in the home. You have grandparents, you have things that their children see in the neighborhood, and it does impact their learning. And maybe the teachers are experiencing violence and they're coming to work, and I have to deal with the teachers dealing with domestic violence issues. So all of that comes together, right? And it causes the center to be a very difficult place to manage, to operate, to try to reach and meet children where they are, finding different solutions and giving the parents tools to ways out. So in schools nowadays, many schools offer trauma training for parents. We didn't do that before. We offered trauma training for teachers. We didn't do that before. We didn't think of social emotional toys for children, social emotional books and activities for the children to do in the class. We actually use a curriculum for social emotional growth in children so that they can learn. We used to say, oh, learn how to play together. Well, now they have to learn how to operate and survive together, manage together. So we do use different curriculums to help to improve that, because if they don't have that early on, and because I'm on here because we forgot about early learning. Like, when I went to college 100 years ago, there wasn't any pre-K. We did all K to 12. We got certified in K to 12, and everybody was happy and you walked away. About 15 years ago, I started hearing more about early learning, early child education, and we know through data that all of the learning that children experience is going to happen to get them ready for kindergarten, if you will. So we're kindergarten readiness, and anything a child's going to experience mostly starts out in the pre-K years. So if their pre-K isn't a good experience because of all their trauma, all the things they come in contact with before they get to the school age, then your child is probably not going to be a good student, and therefore we know the rest of the sentence from there. So yes, their education is impacted, and the amount of PTSD that I see is just unbelievable, that you can see PTSD in a 3 and 4-year-old child, but it's very real. And the homelessness that comes with sometimes with domestic violence. When Maritza talked about it earlier, I didn't think about I have 4 children today that come to me from shelters, and many, as we know, women that are in shelters are there because of domestic violence or very low socioeconomic status, of being mistreated in their home. I had a woman that we call her a woman because she's an unfortunate woman, but she's 21 years old with 3 children in a shelter. So we know that that's her problem, right? Something went there for her, and she's and watching the family and how they navigate things is difficult. But we pride ourselves on providing care. We pride ourselves on providing a safe space for children, and breakfast, lunch, and snack. That's a big deal. We think of it as a natural, oh, you have 3 meals a day. Well, we provide them in the center, and we have family meals so that children can talk to one another and improve how they see the world, so that the world, because that's where most of your fights occur, right? At the dinner table, during feeding times, in the kitchen, so we try to make sure that we bring up and have opportunities for the children to experience a positive interaction during those times.
Thank you so much. Kira, you talked about doing therapy, and you're a trauma specialist. We're going to stay with the children for a minute. what factors contribute to that aggressive child, and how do you counsel them and help that parent with the aggression? Because I know it bleeds out into the school and into high school and probably even college. Can you talk to that for us for a minute, please?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to just like those factors, what's going to be missing is that companionship, that nurturing from both mom and both dad, right? So if a child is not receiving that that nurturement from parents, right, then they're going to feel isolated. They're going to feel unloved. They're going to feel, like nobody pays attention to them. And then that shows up as like aggression. That shows up in many different ways that we see in our children today. But I think, like, for the most part, as a therapist and as a clinician, we always try to involve the parents, but 8 times out of the 10, the parents do not want to be involved. So then we have to take the approach of educating our children on what they are experiencing it. Because once you know what you're experiencing, you know how to then move forward and out of it. And in therapy, we then teach like coping skills. Maybe it's self-soothing. Maybe it's teaching them ways to provide that nurturement to themselves versus depending on someone else, which is, we don't want to do that, but that's the way to kind of get past that aggressive behavior is by educating, providing coping skills, and allowing them to be empowered and to self-empower as well, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any agencies or resources you might be able to drop into the chat or talk about that we who deal with our children might be able to reach out to? Or Maritza, anybody on the panel, if you know any resources, can you share them with us verbally and then drop them in the chat? You're on mute. She's typing.
I was trying to pull up the name of this great agency in Montgomery County, Child and Family Focus. That's where I was going. So I'm trying to drop them in the chat, but they're a great agency that really is great for like helping children experiencing trauma, domestic violence, anything of that nature. I think it's a great agency. And it's a little smaller. I love smaller agencies. Of course, we have Elwyn, we have so many other agencies, but for this area, I think they are one of the best. So let me drop their information in the chat. Oh, there we go.
Okay. Thank you so much. And the reason why I'm leaning on the children for a minute, because we know that the soul trauma starts from a younger age, and then they morph into adulthood and don't know where to place these emotions.
And
So
I would,
as
sorry,
go ahead.
I would drop in Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. They have the Center for Pediatric Trauma and Stress, which is something that is newer. They have trauma practice nurses and people that do that work, social workers and people that work in the entire division. I would drop that link, and that is another great resource. Many of our families use Children's Hospital, right?
Yes.
Most at some point, so they're already connected to that health system, and they could seek help that way. That's a great resource.
Thank you so much.
One of the other things, and this is to speak to both, and I dropped a link in the chat as well. But one of the other things, and this is to speak to both educators and youth, children and youth, raising awareness and driving change starts with education. I'm going to take us back to education, right? Especially for youth, right? So we encourage the community to partner with organizations like Women Against Abuse, Women in Transition, Lutheran Settlement House, Congreso de Latinos Unidos, to provide trainings in schools, places of worship, and community centers, right? Because if we're educating folks on the nuances of those family dynamics that could be contributing to domestic violence and intimate partner violence, then we're spreading the word in a way that is trauma informed in a way that is built to assist folks in understanding that there are resources out there available to them. I spoke a little bit earlier about breaking those intergenerational nuances, right, that contribute to, you know, our youth, you know, surrounding themselves. They're gonna lean toward experiences and people that they are familiar with. So breaking those intergenerational nuances is key. And to me, that is the only way we do that is through education. So Women Against Abuse remain steadfast in teaching students what healthy relationships look like. We have a program called SAFER. I'm branded this morning. SAFER stands for Safety Awareness for Every Relationship. And that is a program that we deliver in schools throughout the Philadelphia area. It's geared specifically to 6th grade and 8th grade students, and also high school students. And it's for the premise of the program is to help students gain an understanding of boundaries. How many of us had to learn about boundary setting later on in our lives, right? Recognizing that no means no. And at that tender early age of 6th grade and 8th grade, no means no. And that they deserve to feel safe in their dating relationships, whenever that may happen. But starting at 6th grade, and giving them, and you know, and building out into with other curriculum that leads to 8th grade really helps to set that foundation. And break down the foundation that some students, unfortunately, are being laid for some students, unfortunately, at home. And you know, and just and this is a way that we break those intergenerational cycles that I talked about earlier, you know, of violence, you know, and empowering youth and young people to pursue the respect and healthy relationships that they deserve. Just because we've seen it growing up, it doesn't mean, you know, we talk about not becoming a product of our environment, right? When we're raised in communities that are disenfranchised, and this is essentially the same thing. We don't have to become a product of that abusive environment, and we do that by way of education.
Thank you. We're going to shift a little bit, and we always talk about the women. That's why we talked about children more, but I would love to talk to Pastor Weathers in regards to men, and why many men who experience the pain of abuse are ashamed to come forward. And is there a way we can create a safe space for them to come forward?
So there is a westernized image of masculinity that you have to be tough. You have to be the man of the household. And with that westernized masculinity, anything or any behavior that's diametrically opposed to that or opposite that, it's a false sense of weakness. Mm-hmm. And so when certain men are facing domestic violence in the household, because you are technically supposed to be, or let me not say technically, from an animated perspective, you're supposed to be the head of household. Anything that shows that you're being abused by your spouse as a man, it's a false image that you are weak. And so because of that weakness and things of that nature, you tend to go into a shell and not want to express the fact that you are in a relationship where you are experiencing domestic violence. Number two, who's going to believe you? You know, who's going to believe that you as a man is facing domestic violence, you know, from your spouse? And I don't know if this is fair to add to this equation, but I'm just going to throw it out there, especially being a man of color also. I'm not saying it's isolated from those who are non-color, but especially being a man of color, who's going to believe that you are, you know, you are receiving domestic violence when it's perceived that you're always the aggressor. And so in that regards, with that false sense of masculinity and with that false sense of you being the head, with that false sense of you have to be the strong, because, you know, in our culture, especially, you know, men, we're told you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to show emotions, you're not supposed to show signs of weakness or anything like that. In any of those signs that you demonstrate, it illustrates that you are less than a man and actually standing up and be a man. And again, that is colonialized Western false sense of masculinity. So those are few factors, I believe, that causes men to go into a shell and not admit that they are facing domestic violence.
I want to just add another part. You are a pastor. So, from faith and community perspective, how can one walk with or alongside men? What kind of help can we give them
Sure.
from the perspective of religion?
If you don't mind, I want to make that across the board, men and women also. So one, we have to create the safe place, right? And number two, we have to avoid misutilizing scripture to shame someone who's facing domestic violence, or to say, like, there's some cases in this 30 years of ministry that folks was led to believe that even though you're being abused, right, it's not God's will for you to leave the marriage, or it goes against the biblical protocol of divorce, which many have misinterpreted what that scripture is about. And just for the record, the beginning of that scripture about divorce in the Bible really isn't about divorce. It's about the Pharisees trying to entrap Jesus with the question of divorce. So let me just make that clear. And so, one, create the safe space, right? What you share with pastors is confidential unless a law is being broken. So creating that safe space and allowing that person to be able to, what's the right word, to be transparent, whether it's a space to cry, whether it's a space to really share what's going on without them feeling walking out feeling shame that they are less than. You know, we have to walk with individuals to help, especially in domestic violence, help them with the wounds and not infect the wounds. You know, when it comes to domestic violence, where men is committing domestic violence against women, whenever I do pastoral counseling and marriage and everything, there's a scripture, and I'm looking at it now, where it says, husbands is to love your wife just as Christ loved the church. And I share with the men, listen, if you're going to love your wife as Christ loved the church, you wouldn't use demeaning language in the church to demean the church. You wouldn't hit a wall in the church. You wouldn't destroy anything in the church. If you love the church that much, you wouldn't hit, you wouldn't use language to demean, etc. That's the same concept you have to use when you go into your marriage, that you would not demean, you would not strike, you would not hit, you would not do anything that would mentally and physically bring your female spouse down or try to abuse. I think one of the last things I would say is this whole domestic, concept of domestic violence. I go back to a seminary class I my first year of seminary. There was a class at Duke University Divinity School. I don't know if they still have the class. It's called CM10. It was Christian Ministry, Introduction to Christian Ministry. And when we had to read material dealing with domestic violence, the one thing that stuck with me back in 1996, 97, that still rings in my mind today in 2025, it said normally when a woman comes forward and say that she's in domestic who's been sexually abused or who's been a victim of domestic violence, it says one reports have often shown that the woman gets the blame. And so how do we, create that space where when someone has been victimized by domestic violence or sexually abused, that we don't automatically jump to the conclusion that it had to be her fault. So those are kind of the things that, we in that space in church as pastors, I think these are some of the mechanisms we need to put in place to minister and help those who are wounded by domestic violence. And I hope I didn't go off on a rampage.
No, you didn't. Thank you. You answered the question. Thank you. Which led me to Maritza. These same men who finally come forward, shelters are limited in space for men. I don't know of there being a shelter for men. What do they do? They might not be able to go stay with a friend. They might not be able to leave the state. Where can men go if they need shelter? And I was a director at a shelter for men, and that was not the place for an abused man to go. There was just a homeless shelter. And somebody with the trauma that they had, they really needed a women against abuse. But if it's a man, shelter, where would they go?
They would come to Women Against Abuse. They would go
Okay.
through the Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline. They'd go through what we call a lethality assessment. And based on their ranking or their scoring of that lethality assessment, we would place them in one of our 2 domestic violence shelters. I want to reiterate, and I think on a professional level, I must say this 100 times a day: Women Against Abuse services everyone of all gender identities. And so while our name is Women Against Abuse, that name is based off of how we were founded and who we were founded by. We were founded by 2 emergency room nurses who had been encountering women coming into the emergency room with broken bones and bruises and reluctantly sharing their stories. And so, they are why Women Against Abuse is called Women Against Abuse, and that's where that comes from. But yes, I want to reiterate that even anyone of any gender identity is welcome at Women Against Abuse.
That's wonderful news. We're rounding the end. I have so much more. I know others want to hear more. I have a couple more questions, but our main focus is to become advocates for those who are going through abuse. How can one become an advocate? Is there training that's offered? And how can we get that training, that certification as an advocate?
Absolutely. So we're always looking for volunteers, as you know, as a nonprofit organization. Many of us on this call are fully understanding of the power that a volunteer holds when they're supporting the work of our individual organization. So Women Against Abuse is no different. We're always looking for volunteers to support our work. Throughout the year, we especially need groups who would be willing to help support or to help organize and transport donated goods, assemble self-care packages, mail out hotline materials, participate in beautification projects at our residential sites, and even representing us at community events. And as you can imagine, in order to do those things, there has to be a certain level of training that goes along with that. And our team is happy to provide the necessary training to volunteer candidates. And you can contact me, and I can put my contact information in the chat. But you can also use this link that I'm going to place in the chat as well to get more information on those opportunities. And so, yeah, we're always looking for folks. What we normally do is we gather, if we receive an influx of folks, what we do is we gather everyone. We set up a virtual training very similar to what we're doing right now. And we go through a DV 101 training. And then we get everyone, queued up on either WhatsApp or via email. And we keep everyone engaged that way. And that, again, education is key. We lay that foundation with the education piece, and then giving everyone the tools and the knowledge they need to go out into the streets, the way you say, Bev, and share what they've learned.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to ask this question. It's loaded, but I would ask you to be brief. I'm going to couple it with our last question. Shakira may be able to answer this. Are there any specific signs or behaviors that a woman or a man can look at during the dating process? And what would indicate that they may be an abusive person? I know it's loaded. We got 5 minutes, but if you could do it in 2, I would love that.
Was that designed for anybody in particular?
Anybody can jump on there.
Give me 1 minute, count my time, because I learned this from my parent, my mother, who was the abuser, like I said. But however, first thing you're looking for is possessive. They're calling you too much. They want to know where you are, asking you what you're doing, clocking. We call it clocking. How much money you're spending, who your friends are. They all of a sudden want to be your friend on all your social media platforms. That is not cute. Is something wrong with it? And they do it purposely to, I call it, brainwash you, so that you become so dependent on that person because you're supposed to be so special. Oh my God, I'm so special. And as it turns out, that is the first sign of abuser. Now, when I say abuser, I don't necessarily mean to throw hands and I'm gonna slap you on the ground, but that abuser can be in other ways of mental, socioeconomic, stressful, that type of thing, that because what I call in my layman terms as abuse is because it's not cute. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Weathers. I thank you, Maritza. That was awesome what you put in the chat.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, in this area, I will be more the person trained to learn about that. Yeah, that's not my expertise in that area, and I'll be very candid with you. I'm 31 years out of the game of dating, so yeah, I would definitely need to have some training in that area.
And you made a wonderful statement. There are so many people who offer help and have no idea how to help, which hurts more. You refer people to the counselor, like Shakira. She has a plethora of degrees and expertise in trauma-informed care. You lead them to those persons. So thank you. That's what we're going to do. So
One
this is
additional,
I'm
one
sorry. Go ahead.
additional thing that I wanted to add to that list is what we call like stonewalling, right? Or what people use today as like ghosting. And that's when, like, if you do something, they won't talk to you or they ignore you as a form of like emotional abuse. So we do want to add that to the list and be mindful that that does show up as abuse as well.
Thank you so much. This has been so rich. And this is my last and final. I got a few more, but we might have to do part 2. We do understand that this is not an individual struggle, but a community struggle. So how can we as a community play a role in changing the culture and reducing domestic violence and being there to support somebody, even if they're not ready to leave?
I think like for this question, one of the main things is education, right? Bringing awareness, even something like, Domestic Violence Day, everybody wear purple, because now we're breaking the stigma. We're allowing people to be comfortable about having those conversations, hearing other stories about like what they've been through also is empowering other individuals who may be going through something silently to start to speak out, right? But I also feel as though like trainings, like these trainings that we have, to help people recognize the signs, but also like we did just now, dropping those resources and handing people those like little cards of like who to call and when to call. And one of my favorite is when you go in the ladies' room and then they have on the bathroom stall, like, if you are experiencing abuse, call this number. So I feel like those little things do add up, but advocacy, training, education, all of those things matter.
I know we're out of time, but I just quickly want to say, thank you, Sakira, for continuing that education piece. But I also want to say, understanding those very difficult times, right? Understanding that sports events, that sports season that's a highlight for intimate partner violence. Highlighting or understanding that the holidays is another time where intimate partner violence is at its peak. When your hometown loses a game, know that Remember, one
Yes,
in 3
indeed.
women, 1 in 4 men are experiencing domestic violence. Everybody on this call knows someone. And also remembering that it takes 7 to 10 times for somebody to leave, and leading with that trauma-informed lens when you're talking to your girlfriend, when you're talking to one of your guy friends, when you're talking to a cousin, a mom, a dad, whomever, understanding that all of those components are things that are components that we need to keep in mind when we're a community person trying to be in support of someone who may be experiencing intimate partner violence.
Hey,
Thank you.
Reverend Dr. Graham,
Yes.
if I could just add a quick 15, 20
Sure.
seconds. As far as from a church perspective, we have to understand that we're just not a Sunday morning experience, and that ministries and support groups have to be developed to address various aspects of what's happening within our community, which is domestic violence. We can't be just a church that focuses on worship and studying God's word, but meet people where they are. And meeting people where they are means that we're walking with people who are walking with individuals who are dealing with various type of abuse, whether sexual abuse, domestic abuse, spiritual abuse, mental abuse, etc. And so we just can't be a Sunday morning experience. And I just want to add.
That's so important. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all so much for taking the time out for this discussion. There was one question I'm just gonna ask real quick. You might be able to drop it, Maritza. Somebody asked, how do they get a lawyer from Women Against Abuse? You can drop that in the chat.
Remember that access to all of our services is through the domestic violence hotline. So I'm going to drop that information here.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. We can go to the next slide. How can we help our victims of domestic violence? You're there to help them and support them, not to rescue or save them. If you remember that, your feelings won't get hurt when you see them stay. They may stay because they got to figure it out. It looks easy to leave, but it's not. There's finances, there's pets, there's children, there's housing, a plethora of things that have to be considered before somebody leaves. What you can do is be a support, make a safety plan. Please look up what a safety plan is so you can safety plan with your folks or yourself. Make sure you keep those documents where you can get to them when you need them. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all the panelists for taking time out of your schedule. Thank you to everyone who signed on and participated in this panel discussion. It's very important. We got to, like I said, take the cover off of domestic violence. It's out there, it's real, it's happening. It's in our family, it's in our community. Our children are being affected by it. Our men's manhood is being taken away. We have to consider all of these things. So I just want to say thank you so much. These are some resources that you can look to. If you do need to get some more information, please reach out to any of those on the panel or myself, and we'll be sure to help you. Thank you again. My heart is full, and I thank you. And that is the end of on behalf of our State Director, Olivia B. Miller, we would like to thank you on behalf of the symposium committee. We say thank you on behalf of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. We thank you for coming out because it's Saturday morning. You could have slept in, or you could be at the park somewhere having fun. But you came here for this cause, and we thank you for that. Everyone, enjoy your day and do something good. Go have some ice cream. Thank
you so much.
Jordan, stay on. On.
Tech team, you can stop the recording.